Hey guys, this is Peter from Peter Gabriel Photography. Hope you're doing well. We're going to edit another image that I took a few weeks ago. In front of you, you're going to see an image straight out of camera that I took of Ella. I've not edited this image at all, so let's take a look. You can see that there's a lot of reflection going on here, and you can see the blue sky and the white clouds that are reflected in the water. Let me explain how I photographed this. There's a beach not too far away from the house called Nudgee Beach, and when the tide goes out, Nudgee Beach leaves these little tidal pools behind. And when I wanted to do reflection photography, when I was looking at some tutorials on YouTube on how other people were doing their reflection photography, a lot of people were using pools. They were building. I didn't want to do that. I thought the ocean could be a great pool, so we went to Nudgee Beach when the tide was out, and then left this amazing little pool behind. And the water was very, very calm and very still, and we were able to get this lovely reflection of Ella in the water. I shot this at ISO 100 with my 85mm Sigma lens at 1.4 and 6400 of a second was my shutter speed. The reason I shot it at 1.4 instead of 2.8 or 5.6 is that I really wanted to keep the, ethereal aspect of the photograph. I really wanted a lot of bokeh. As soon as you leave the subject matter, as soon as you leave Ella, I wanted it to just go into blur and just have as much bokeh in the images as I could. So that's why I shot it at 1.4. First thing we're going to do is take a look at this image, and I'm going to crop it because I've added a little bit too much, so I'm just going to bring the crop in a little bit. So we're just going to bring it up here a little and up a little bit. Again, I want to keep as much of the white cloud in the shot that I can, and just a tad down, and we're going to bring this image in a little bit, just like that. And that's a very good crop. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Adobe Color. I'm not a big fan of Adobe Color, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to Camera Portrait, which is one of my favorite profiles you can have in Photoshop for portraits. So we're going to do that, and you can see it's brightened up the skin a little bit. Great, and I'm in the color mixer here. I'm just going to move a little bit of orange from the color and a little bit of red just to, make her skin look a little bit brighter. Lovely. Going into the light panel, I'm going to add a lot of contrast because I love contrast. We're going to add a lot of contrast just to make the reflection stand out a little bit more. Now, in doing that, I am darkening the reflection a little bit, but we're going to figure that out by bringing up the shadows, which will bring up, you can see is bringing up that reflection a little bit. That's a little bit too much removing shadows. And we're going to drop the highlights in the whites a tiny bit. Great. Love the way that looks. All right, I'm pretty happy with that so far, but let's keep going. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into masks. So click on the mask button. And what I love about this in the raw editor is how many things you can do here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on background. And this is just going to mask the background, so everything but Ella or the subject matter. And it's done a really good job. So everything that's pinkish reddish is what we're going to edit. You can see that we're not editing the reflection because that's normal. We're just editing everything else. All right. So I want to really emphasize the blue skies and the white clouds. So the first thing we're going to do is going to drop the temperature down. So add a little bit of blue so it looks like she's floating in the sky. Love it. Add contrast again. A little bit more contrast. I love contrast. We're going to drop the highlights a little bit and the whites. Not too much. And just bring up the shadows a little bit. Drop down the blacks. I love it. I think that looks really, really good. So far, I'm very, very happy. Next mask we're going to do is we're going to click on Select Subject, and this is going to be the subject that I photographed, which is Ella. You can see again that it's done a really good job just highlighting her. So I want to bring her up a little bit. So we're going to bring up the exposure on Ella a little bit. Again, love contrast, add contrast, and bring up the shadows because I definitely don't want her face here in the water to be too shadowed. I really want to bring that up. And drop the highlights again. Even though I want to bring this shadow up, I don't want to bring too much exposure to her face. It's more just the shadows that I want to lift from her reflection. Great. But there's more we can do. If you can then go into Create New Mask, you can click on Select People. Okay. You can see these are all the options that we have. So we're going to click on Facial Skin and Body Skin and hit OK. So all we're working on is whatever is in pink red here. You can see that it's missed her face a little bit, but that's all right. I'm not too worried about that. And first thing we're going to do is just drop the texture down a little bit and just the clarity. Lovely. And we're going to, again, add more contrast. And as I said earlier, when I did the camera portrait, it removed a little bit of color from her skin. So let's add a little bit of color back in. So we're going to go into the saturation and just bring that up maybe 10, 15. Just add a little bit of color back in. That's better. Now we're going to go back to create new mask, because one of the things that I don't like is how bright her white dress is. So we're just going to drop that a little bit. So we're going to click on close. You can see it's highlighted what's in red there. And we're going to hit create. Now, while it hasn't selected all of her clothes, that's not the biggest thing in the world. And I'll show you how I fix that in a second. And I'm going to drop down the highlights and just the exposure on her clothes a little bit. And we're going to add texture to her clothes just to make it stand out a little bit more. Perfect. Now, as I said earlier, it didn't capture all her clothes, but that's okay. I'm going to click on add by brush. And everything I do with the brush, if I apply the brush, is going to do exactly what I just did. So we're just going to apply the brush here, just to the rest of her clothes. And by clicking on show overlay, I can see exactly what I'm just brushing. Great, there we go. Just adding a little bit of that contrast and that exposure, just dropping the exposure a little bit. The other thing I can do is I can do create new mask. I'm going to go brush, and I'm going to lift up the shadows. And I'm just going to brush here, just because I want to bring some of that back up. And by making the brush smaller, bigger or smaller, I can just do that with the mouse wheel. So if I want to get a little bit of fine detail, I can just make the brush a little bit smaller. And I can see my overlay here. I probably missed a few spots. Yep, I have. And I'm just working on anything below the waterline. Yep, pretty happy with that. Okay, so I think that's everything I'm going to do in the raw editor for now. I'll come back to this in a second, and I'll show you why I come back to it. But we're going to open this up in Photoshop. So that was the raw editor. Now this is Photoshop. Okay, if you do Control 0 on your PC, I don't know what it is on Mac, it'll bring up the image to full screen on your workplace here. All right, I'm going to create a new layer by doing Control J. And in you can see all these different channels. I like just to drop it down to soft light, and I like the way soft light looks. Now, I'm not going to do it specifically that way because that's at 100%, and I think that's too much of an effect. So I'm going to drop this down to about 30. And there's what it looks like now, and there is before. So it hasn't done a lot, but I like sort of the effect that it does. My Photoshop is all about little things. I don't want to make things look too dramatic. I don't want to make it look overdone. So it's just very small increments that I do with my Photoshop. Perfect. I'm going to do Control J again, and we're going to go back into the Camera Raw editor, and we're going to go to some presets. So we're going to go back. So we went to Filter, going back to Camera Raw Filter. And the preset button is right here at the end. So we're going to click on presets. I've set up some favorites of presets that I really like. So the first one we're going to look at is just the black and white. I don't think black and white would be very good with this image, so I'm not going to choose that one. The next one we have is chestnut, which adds a lot of color back in. It really makes the photograph warm, which I don't necessarily want at this moment. And we're going to go cover girl, I think, which makes it, again, look really ethereal. So I'm going to choose cover girl. And we're going to hit OK. Now, right away, you're going to see that again, has taken a lot of the color out of her skin. So if you look at before, has a little bit more color in the skin to what it is at 100%. But because I opened up a layer, I get to play with the opacity with the preset that I just did. And instead of being at 100%, we're going to go to probably 40. There you go, 40. Again, you can't, it's just a minor little difference. It just brightens up the image a little bit. But again, small details. I don't want to do it heavy-handed. I just want to do it very, very gently. And we're going to flatten that image. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, there's other things we can go in. We can go into levels. And this tells me, that is quite a bright image. And I can drop it down a little bit to make it a little bit darker. Sorry, a little bit brighter. And I can go make it a little bit darker. And again, I can just go in and look at what I did before. And it's added a little bit more contrast to the image, which isn't bad. And I can drop that opacity down to, say, 40%. What it is now and before. So again, it adds a little bit of contrast to the image, not too much. And again, I love the way that blue sky looks. I love the way the reflection is. I brighten the shadows up in the reflection so it stands out a little bit more. The dress might be a little bit too white, so I'm going to go back into my raw editor, click on camera raw filter. And again, if I go back to the cropping here, sorry, the masking, I'm going to wait for it to find her image. And I think I'm just going to bring that dress down a little bit. And again, we're just going to go to close again, kit create, and again, I think it's a little bit too bright. So drop that down a little bit. Again, add more texture just to make it stand out a little bit more. And as you can see, it didn't mask the entire dress. So we're going to go to add, we're going to go brush, and we're going to add some of that back in. And by clicking on show overlay, you can see what I'm masking here, or see what I'm brushing. Turn overlay off, and I've added a little bit of color. So it's not so bright, her dress. I'll take it back. And there what it looks like now, and that's what it looked like before. So I like the fact that I've added a little bit more texture and a little less exposure on the dress. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to send that to the client. So thanks very much for watching. I hope this helped you. My editing style is very easy. I don't try to make things complicated. I don't make things heavy-handed. I like to do naturally as I possibly can. So yeah, leave a comment. Let me know if what I'm doing has helped you at all. And I'll see you in the next video.